Hi guys, I'm Lindsay. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video, we're talking about homeschool curriculum. So, homeschool curriculum. Where to even begin? Probably one of the most popular questions that I get is what curriculum do I use, or how do I know what to teach them? Through trying out different pre-made curriculums and really spending so much time researching other curriculums and trying to decide if they were going to be a good fit for my children and their learning styles and their learning levels, and finding that they were all either just falling short or feeling rather restricting versus something that made us really excited to get up and learn that day. I was finding, of course, in the beginning as a new homeschooler that I thought I needed a curriculum. I thought I needed everything laid out for me so that I knew my kids were learning what they should learn or what they needed to learn for their age or their grade. And even when spending the money on pre-made curriculums or taking the time to find out if I thought the pre-made curriculum were going to be a good fit for us, I was finding that I was still having to piece things in and take things out and rearrange the way we were learning things. So it still wasn't working. And that's because everyone learns differently. Everyone has different interests. So it really wasn't a surprise that one pre-made curriculum was going to be something that fit all of our needs. So sure, you could go and you could find different curriculum, but a lot of the times I was finding that the pre-made curriculums kind of followed the same subjects and topics, and I think that I found it to be more restricting than helpful. Now, that's not the case for some. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm not knocking curriculums out there. It just wasn't for us. So I've decided to build my own. Since that's what I felt like I was really leaning towards anyways, and I just kept feeling like I needed the curriculum to make sure that I was doing things the correct way or giving them the information that they needed or should learn. And we don't need to do that. I don't think that we need to stress ourselves out so much about if our children are learning what other children are learning. I mean, obviously, all children should learn certain things, but it doesn't have to be at the same pace. It doesn't have to be at the same time, and it most certainly does not have to be in the same way. So after my big aha moment of I did not need to purchase a curriculum and that I could build a curriculum, I really started to let myself, kind of calm down about the whole curriculum subject, because you don't really need one, guys. You don't. You just need to be able to observe your children and know what they're ready and interested to learn it. And I know a lot of the times people will think, well, they have to learn reading or they have to learn math, so it doesn't matter if they're interested, they still have to do it. And the flaw that I was finding in that is that all of a sudden those lessons that we had scheduled and planned and really tried to stick to within the curriculum felt so forced rather than embraced. And I feel like as homeschoolers, we all, and I'm sure even non-homeschooling parents will feel this way, we want our kids to love learning and we want their education to be meaningful. And yet we try to sit down and say, okay, well, you need to learn this now in this amount of time, and then I'm going to quiz you on it and see how much you've learned, and then we're going to move on. We become so focused on what they should be learning instead of, are they really learning it? Are they taking this in? How much of it are they taking in Is it working for them? Is it not working for them? And are they interested? And yes, I truly believe that your children should be interested in. And I know that not every child's going to love every subject, but there are ways to say, okay, you're interested in this, and then relate it to that subject. Okay, well, you're going to need to know how to do this so that you can progress in this. And I feel like a lot of the times there's just such a disconnect between, you know, that part of education and what we know about school. And as homeschoolers, it really is kind of just what the process that we go through, determining that school and education are two totally separate things, and that in education it looks different for everyone. I feel like pre-made curriculum were just not for my family, and was just not for us, which kind of aided in us kind of developing into this unschooling family. And believe me, I spent a lot of time trying to not put a label on it, but the label kind of just isn't necessarily for us, but it's for like people who are researching what kind of homeschoolers we are. And I kind of, you know, am becoming a little bit more passionate about this unschooling journey. And that's just because I think that no matter what type of homeschoolers we are constantly worrying about if we're providing enough information, or if they're learning enough, or if we're doing enough, or if they're doing enough. And that pressure and that guilt and that doubt kind of just sit in the back of our minds. And as stressful as those thoughts are, I think that they're totally normal to have, because as homeschoolers, we're stepping completely outside of today's norms for education, and we're taking full responsibility for the education of our children, and that's not a light task. Just like it's not a light task to send them to school to have somebody else take responsibility for their education. Education is a very important part of life. So yeah, we're gonna stress a little bit about it, and we should question ourselves about it. And I don't think it's a bad thing that we do so. But here's the thing. We also need to believe and trust not only in ourselves, but in our children in this process. And this is what I mean. So I could sit down with my kindergartner, right? And I could say, okay, we're going to learn to read this today. And say she struggles. And now she's frustrated, and reality is I could be as patient as possible, but eventually I'm going to get frustrated too. And now we're both frustrated. And instead of this being such a wonderful experience for her to learn to read, it seems as though it's a forced situation where she needs to read. So instead of focusing on the actual act of teaching them to read, I focus on the fact of teaching them the importance of reading. What's going to happen when you are able to read? What things could you read? What can you do when you are able to read? And from there, they realize the importance of reading, and they start showing their own interest in things that they want to read and pursue as far as reading. And the same thing happens in all other subjects. So as I say that I build my own curriculum, and I'll get into how I do that in a little bit, I simply mean that I have become aware of what they should be learning based on grade. I don't particularly like to put a grade on my children. I don't like to say that we're teaching specifically first grade, or Khalees is going into second grade, so I don't say specifically second grade. I go by what level they're at in their learning. So are they learning to read? Are they learning to count? Are they learning to add? Are they learning to multiply? Are they learning to write sentences, or stuff like that? It isn't just like oh, that's part of first grade, no longer push that aside, we're moving on to second grade stuff. It's, have we finished this? Do you truly understand it? And are you ready to move on? Those conversations you can have with your children, even if they're young. I do it even with my preschooler. Do you understand these colors? He says no, then we work more in colors for however long it takes. And we try different approaches until something clicks. and then we move on. And it doesn't feel like this forced situation where everyone's in tears or fighting. And I'm not saying we don't have our struggles, because there are still times where they need to understand that sometimes you need to push yourself through the discomfort to get the reward. But a lot of times, kids will let you know when they're ready to learn something, or if they're interested in learning something, or they'll tell you and show you what they are interested in so you can relate the subject to their interest. Not every kid's going to love math. Not every kid is going to love language arts. Not every kid is going to love science. But you will find ways, after really getting to know how your child learns, to introduce those subjects in a way where they can understand and want to understand the subject. For me, it was important that we really set aside the need for the pre-made curriculum, and instead we created an environment that just promoted learning. And I know we probably hear that a lot in the homeschooling world, that we want our kids to love learning and we want their education to be meaningful. And those are all fantastic goals. And I think that it's done by creating the environment that allows them to explore learning, even if it's exploring learning in their own way and their own interests, and on their own time. I don't believe that it needs to be a scheduled thing where we sit down by 9 and we do math until 9:30 and then we do reading until 10. I don't believe that it has to be that structured, and I am totally aware that for some people that structure works. I have noticed so much by taking a step back and really allowing us to kind of learn in an organic way, that they're still taking in so much information without the struggle of it all. So, and like I said, I think that really comes back to the environment that they're in, and having the available resources and constantly discussing with them how to pursue an interest, how to learn more, what resources are available to them that they can use, what other topics can they explore. I think that that's the way to really get children to dive deep into the self-directed learning. And we can really be there to support them and guide them through their learning experience. We need to be able to trust in our children that they're going to show us and tell us when they are ready to learn something, or when they're ready to move on from learning something, or they're going to tell us what they're interested in, so that we know how we can relate whatever information they need to learn to their interests, so they can really embrace the learning experience. I mean, even up until last week, I was realizing that we were forcing certain lessons on them. It wasn't necessarily the subject itself, it was the work itself. It was tedious, it was repetitive, and it was boring. And they were bored, and I was bored, and then we were all frustrated, and then came the tears and the whining. The whole learning experience got turned into something that just felt wrong and just uncomfortable, and we didn't need that. Okay, and I'm telling you guys, it was last week, because I'm still learning this whole process too. I'm still learning what our homeschool journey looks like, and it takes time. So what I have come to learn about curriculum is that it's not necessarily about the curriculum itself. Yes, we are required to teach them certain things, and yes, we should know those subjects. So your school district should tell you what those requirements are. You can research a little bit about topics that most children in those particular grades are learning, and you can go from there. That's what I did. I spent a lot of time. I got the requirements from the school district, and then I spent a lot of time researching other pre-made curriculums and other topics that are suggested for their grade level or learning level, if you don't necessarily teach by grade. And it is important to know those subjects. It is important for us to take action in knowing what they should learn, instead of just relying on a curriculum that's already made to tell us what our child should be learning next. We should know. I'm not saying you need to sit down and plan out a whole year worth of activities. I was finding that to be super stressful, and I was also finding that we weren't really completing things like that. That my family functions better in a more organic learning environment than a super structured sit down and do math on Mondays, language arts on Tuesdays, science on Wednesdays. It wasn't working like that for us. I'm sure it works out great for other people, but not for us. So we don't use a particular curriculum. And I know this probably goes against unschooling, but I do have a checklist. I have a checklist for each child. I have put together a list of, through my research, of what topics and subjects they're required to learn and what they are, and topics that are suggested that they learn. And I think that it just helps me because it helps me review with them. I will go through the checklist every now and then and be like, oh, hey, are you comfortable with this? And I'll maybe ask them a few questions to see if they're really understanding the concept. And if they aren't, then we take a little more time on it. And if they are, then we move on. And it just kind of helps me stay sane with 4 kids. It can get a little crazy with where everybody's at and what we've already touched on and what we need to touch on. And then I also include the subject of strictly interest-based. So things that they are interested in. So I will sit down with them and I'll say, hey, what do you want to learn about? And it can be, I tell them anything. It can be space. It can be how things are made. It can be how to bake something. It can be literally anything. There is no topic that is, untouchable for their interests. And we spend a lot of time on those subjects and we build off of those subjects. I will link that checklist below in the description so that if you have a child in kindergarten or first grade, you're more than welcome to check out those subjects. And I even have a book that I'm going to show you guys. I had found this year. It's called Home Learning Year by Year by Rebecca Rupp, and it's how to design a creative and comprehensive homeschool curriculum. If you are a homeschooler, even if you're an unschooler or an eclectic homeschooler, this book is just a great resource to have on hand. Even if you are more like me and I prefer just kind of discussing things with my children, and then putting together activities and lessons based on how I think that they're going to best learn the subjects and topics. But it walks you through each grade from preschool through high school and the subjects that they should learn. And it also provides resources for those subjects and topics. So here it is again, and I'll link it down below for you. It's a great resource for any homeschooler to have on hand. But as far as like official lessons and curriculum, that's really where it ends for me. I try to follow my checklist. And then the other thing I want to mention is that I believe our children do best in an environment that promotes learning and offers an abundance of resources that allow them to pursue their interests, allow them to explore learning in different ways, and introduces new subjects or topics and lets them see different cultures and lets them just kind of experience learning in a way that's outside of a structured format. And how we do that, guys, I can't stress this enough, is books. They open up so many possibilities for us to learn so many new things. I heavily rely on books. I believe in having them around the house. I believe in having them available for them to look through. Because like I said, that environment around them plays the biggest role in how comfortable they are in expressing their interests or how eager they are to explore a new topic or dig deeper into a topic that they're interested in. Books are just so wonderful. And other than books, I do believe that technology is an important thing to be teaching our children. It isn't going away. TV is here for the long haul. YouTube, guys, use it. It's helpful. It's probably one of the bigger resources that I know even as an adult I use to learn about things. Children have that option as well, and I am constantly teaching my children about all of their options. So yeah, books and technology. They use their tablets. We learn on the TV. I have them practice typing and using the mouse on a computer or a laptop. Those are very important to teach them, especially because I think that the possibilities are endless when we use technology. But also having a physical book in hand, those two are just, I believe, the most important ways to have an environment that really promotes learning for them, or promotes that love for learning. And then also, guys, the library, and go outside and experience things with your hands and see things for yourself, and let them really experience the lesson, not just in your home or at a table, really allowing them a full experience from hands-on to something that they're going to remember, that wasn't just done on a worksheet for a select number of minutes. Okay, so I mentioned books and resources, and before I wrap up the video, I really wanted to share some of the things that I use. So now I showed you the home learning year by year, which I highly recommend. Then I also always have some poetry books on hand. So this is A Light in the Attic. We have read through some other poetry books so far, like Where the Sidewalk Ends was their favorite, so that's why we started this one. But I like to read a little bit after breakfast or during breakfast or before we start our chores. They respond well to poetry, and there's so many possibilities with poetry that are just, I mean, so fantastic, and I love that they love it. So poetry books, or really any other books. And then, guys, Usborne. If you have not heard of Usborne, I highly suggest you go check them out. They are probably one of my favorite companies. No, I don't work for them. I did, but I don't anymore. But Usborne. This is probably one of our most used Usborne books. It's the Children's Encyclopedia, and it is wonderful for topic discussions and getting their, brain gears really moving, and they get to kind of discover so many different topics that they wouldn't see just, playing with their toys or whatever. This really opens up cultures and science and you name it, it's in here, and it's fantastic. And then things like this. I found this was actually a recommendation from the Home Learning Year by Year book. It's called Family Math, and they have a few, there's like a Family Math for younger children too, but this one includes multiple grade or learning levels, and there's games and activities that are kind of ready to go, or you can put a little prep into them if you want to. But I love that this kind of helps me include all of my children, or most of my children. It also gives me an opportunity for one-on-one lessons, and the girls also love helping Lincoln learn these things. So having things like this, games and books and other options for learning that don't really require a curriculum. It's nice to have that base understanding of what they should be learning, so that you can kind of just every now and then check in with them. Hey, are you comfortable with this? Do you want to learn more about this? And see where they're at and see what they tell you. It's okay to follow their lead. It's okay to prompt them for certain subjects or topics. It's okay to experience an education outside of a curriculum. We are totally capable of self-directed learning, and we are completely capable of knowing when our children are ready to learn something new or if they need more time. And I will come back to this every single time. It's about believing and trusting in yourself and in your children through this whole process, and really being able to observe what is working and changing things if they aren't working. I just, one last thought before I wrap this up is that understanding that children learn best when they can read it and experience it, and the whole lesson comes to life for them. So don't worry so much about if they're doing things how they should be doing them. Are they doing things and actually learning it? Are they enjoying their experience and learning? Because the only way they're going to love to learn is if we make the experience something they love to do. And I can't see how something so structured and planned is something that children love to do. So that's why I choose to build a curriculum and really follow my kids' lead. And I kind of said goodbye to a super structured plan and having a yearly plan of lessons and doing it that way, because I've experienced different children when we really started to relax about the curriculum and discuss more and experience more and read more. So homeschooling isn't just something that we sit down and do for a certain amount of time each day. Homeschooling to me is a lifestyle. It's not only for ourselves, but for our children to see the importance of knowledge and how we can obtain that knowledge and how we can do that every day through things that we do every day, through just living and experiencing life, and how to kind of relate all of what we are required to learn to what we want to learn, and how to do it in a way that we are embracing learning and loving the experience and doing it together and sharing those experiences. And even if we differ in interests, sharing those interests with each other and being able to support each other through our education. And that rings true for us as parents too, is we need to set an example and set the tone for our education and be a good example of someone who wants to learn and loves to learn. All right, so that's it for me talking your ear off about curriculum. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions at all about unschooling or creating your own curriculum, drop your questions below. I want to hear them, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you again for watching. Bye. Thanks for watching here at Like a Wildflower. Make sure you subscribe so that you can be the first to know about new videos.